have a couple participants joining us.
Awesome.
Yeah, let me give it a minute. And we're at 11:30. I'll give it to 11:31. Yep, people are jumping on. We are live, guys. And it looks like
Awesome.
we have a great turnout here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, the second in Creel Consulting's 2021 webinar series. Today's topic is Oracle Cloud Reporting, Understanding Reporting Tools and When to Use Them. My name's Kelly Fitzpatrick, and I will be your host for this session. Our presenters today are Michael DiRienzo and Connor Donahue, both of whom are Associate Analysts at Creel. If you have any questions during this session, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We will leave time at the end to address all the questions. At this time, all attendees should be in listen-only mode. A recorded version of this webinar will be available for anyone who's interested. Again, for those of you just joining us, welcome to our webinar, Oracle Cloud Reporting, Understanding Reporting Tools and When to Use Them. I'll now pass it over to Connor and Michael to get us started. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. So before we get started, I wanted to give you a little bit of a background about who we are. So again, my name is Michael DiRienzo. I've been working with Creel for about 2 years now. I have experience in public, private, federal spaces. I also have experience with multinational organizations. So with those experiences, I had a pretty diverse background, and I had a lot of experience with Oracle Cloud Reporting tools. So I wanted to share with you guys today what knowledge I've gained and try to pass the baton off a little bit. So, Connor.
Yep. So kind of the same thing. My name is Connor Donahue. I've been with Creel a little over a year now. My experience has been mainly in the private sector across Oracle Cloud ERP projects and Oracle Cloud EPM projects. So just like Mike, I've had experience with OTBI and Oracle Cloud specifically, and reporting applications in Oracle Cloud. So we just wanted to give you a quick run through of things you can do in OTBI.
So again, before we start this presentation, just to save some bandwidth, we're going to stop sharing our screen, our cameras. But at any point, if we get to the questions part of our presentation, we'll turn our cameras back on to address everyone. So I'm going to turn that off right now. Awesome. So there we go.
All right. So for our objectives today, we would like to walk you through this presentation and give you guys a little bit of knowledge of the following. We want you to know how to use and create an OTBI analysis, how to create and use a formula-driven column, understanding use of multiple subject areas within OTBI, and then how to create and use dashboards. The other thing we also want you to leave with understanding of is what a data model is and how to use it, and understanding when to use an analysis as opposed to a data model. So in summary, we're going to show you how to create a quick analysis in OTBI, and then show you the different things you can do off of that analysis using OTBI's capabilities. So what is OTBI? Just backtracking a little bit, there are 4 reporting tools in Oracle Cloud. But our main focus today is going to be Oracle Transactional Business Intelligence, otherwise known as OTBI. OTBI is an ad hoc query tool used for self-service reporting for Oracle Cloud. You really don't need a technical background to build reports in OTBI. They're used for the end user to be able to make reports, and you can simply drag and drop pre-created columns and fields from different subject areas to create a report for your real-time analysis to help with daily decision-making. So just to hit on the other tools a little bit, just to give you some background in the session. We're not going to touch on them today, but just to give you guys an idea. One other tool you can use in Oracle Cloud is FRS, which is Financial Reporting Studio. This allows you to create reports based off of GL balances from the Essbase Cube. The Essbase Cube is, you can think of it as just a place where your GL balances go. They're stored in a different format to be better used for reporting. So an example of a report you may want to create using this tool is a balance sheet or an income statement. Another reporting tool that you can use in Oracle Cloud is SmartView. This is an Excel plugin that allows you to manipulate and view GL balances in the desired format. So like, let's say if you want to do some analysis and just see what's going on with a specific natural account, you can go in and do that there. The last tool in Oracle Cloud is BI Publisher. So this is similar to OTBI, but you need a technical background and a working knowledge of SQL to create reports. This tool allows you to create similar reports as OTBI, but just for a much higher volume and different format options. So we're just going to get into creating an OTBI analysis. So obviously, to start, you need to know where to go. So you can either click on the Tools tab on your home screen and then click on the Reports cluster, or you can click on the navigator in the top left of your screen right here, and then you'll be able to click on under Tools. You'll be able to click on Reports and Analytics. So moving on, now that you know where to go. So this will bring you to the Reports and Analytics screen, and then here's where you would go to create analysis. Once you're on the Report and Analytics screen, you can click Browse Catalog. This will bring you into the OTBI work area. This is what your OTBI work area is going to look like. But just for today, we're going to show you how to create an analysis. So here you would click on, once you get into the OTBI dashboard, you would click on New, and then you would click on Analysis from that dropdown. So once you decide to create a new analysis, you're going to need to select the subject area. So let's talk a little bit about subject areas. You'll be prompted to pick one once you create your analysis, decide to create your analysis. But what subject areas are is that they contain columns of data that are used to create reports. Subject areas are created by sorting data into logical groups based on different areas of a business. So this data is going to be grouped into folders underneath your subject area, just in a structure that makes sense using the data. But for our example today, we went with the subject area of payables, invoices, transactions, real time, which will allow us to look at AP invoice data coming from our payables subledger. So just to give you an idea of the columns we picked for our analysis, we selected invoice number, identifying PO, invoice date, invoice description, invoice amount paid, balancing segment code, and natural account segment code. We picked these just to do some analysis on our AP invoices from our payable subledger. All right, so this is just give you an idea of what it looks like when you're dragging and dropping your columns. So to the left, you can see the folder structure I touched on before that houses the different data elements that you can bring into your report. So that's just over here. You would expand one of these folders and just drag and drop into the selected columns field. You can reorder these by dragging and dropping as well. So all you would have to do is click on invoice description and then just drag it before invoice number if you wanted to appear there in the report. So one thing I want you to note for later, because we're going to touch on it, is this box right here that looks like it's a box inside of a box. We're going to touch on that later, but this is the button that you would use to add multiple subject areas to your analysis. So just as another thing we want you to get comfortable with, if you want to preview what your analysis would look like while you're creating it when it's going to be ran, you can click the results tab at the subject area, on top of the subject area library, this one right here, and you can see what your report would look like. Here's just a quick example of what bringing your columns in and just seeing what the data looks like from our AP subledger. So all in all, this is how you would create a quick and simple analysis. But just I want to preface what we're going to be doing next. We'll be adding formula-driven columns to this analysis. So note this calculated measure icon up here. Clicking this will allow you to create a new calculated measure. And then this right here is just how you would, we're not going to be touching on this today, but it's something that we thought was important to note, is if you hit this drop down, you can add either a pie chart or a pivot table or a bar graph or a performance tile to your analysis, just to visualize the data in a different format. So like I said, we're getting into formula-driven columns. So like, what is a formula-driven column? We talked about a calculated measure before. So a formula-driven column and a calculated measure are one and the same. So coming back to that term, calculated measure, think of a calculated measure as a column with an open field where you can write your own formula that derives information from the OTBI catalog. So you can create your own calculated measure by using existing formulas that are in the OTBI, editing existing formulas, adding functions, or conditional expressions. So using these, OTBI will create a new column using SQL for you based off of your calculated measure. This is part of what we were talking about before about how this is end user friendly. You don't need to have a technical background to use it. So for our use case, just for this example, this presentation, is adding a flag to AP invoices that have an outstanding balance and list them as unpaid, and those with a complete balance as paid. So just use that as an example for creating a calculated measure using the analysis that we just created before. All right, so now we're getting into, once you've clicked that button that I mentioned before, it'll bring you into this new calculated measure page. So once you create a new calculated measure screen pops up, you're gonna add the folder name and the column heading for your new calculated measure. You can name this anything you want. What's really gonna show up is the column heading on your report. So just make it something that has significance to you and your new calculated measure. To help you create your formula, you can drag and drop values from the subject area library to the left. But what I do want to focus your attention on is this bar down here. Here you can add different formulas, filters, and variables to your column formula. But I really do want to focus on this formula button right here, because that's what we used for our calculated measure. So after you've clicked the formula button, it'll bring you into this insert function field. In these folders, there are a ton of different formulas you can choose from. For this example, we will use the expression case if. So selecting this will present you with the syntax case when, request condition 1, then expression 1, else expression 2. So just breaking that down into basically English, request condition 1 is the condition the formula is looking to satisfy. So what that basically is, this is going to be the basis for your expression. It is going to drive everything else. Then is what the formula will present if the condition is satisfied. And then else is what the formula will present if the condition is not satisfied. So after you've done that, you're going to select OK right here. So that's just selecting to reiterate, selecting your function, and then selecting OK. So now you're going to come into this screen and it's going to give you the syntax you saw before on the previous page. Here, you would be adding your request condition, your then, and your else conditions. So now just showing you what the formula would look like once you update it. Since our use case is you need to see AP invoices that have an outstanding balance listed as unpaid as well as those as paid, your column formula is going to be when the invoice amount minus the paid invoice amount columns from your analysis equals 0, then populate the field as paid. Else, it doesn't equal 0, then populate as unpaid. So in this scenario, your request condition is invoice amount minus invoice paid amount equals 0. It's that string right here. And then being paid, else being unpaid. This is what your formula would look like once you've decided upon your conditions. And that is just, you would type it in. So here you created your here you can see your new calculated measure in action. Note that when an invoice amount equals invoice amount paid, you get a paid flag in your formula driven column. So invoice amount equals invoice amount paid, you're gonna get a paid flag. But let's just say you wanted to validate it's working properly and see unpaid as well, because of the preview, you only saw paid. You can do so by creating a filter on your formula-driven column. So you're going to click the gear. By doing this, you're going to find your formula-driven column in the selected columns field. And then you're going to click unpaid invoices, the gear right here. And then you're going to click filter. And then for the operator, once this pops up, the new filter screen, you're going to, as the operator, you're going to click is equal to dash is in. So what that's going to do is it's going to look for just what this value is and pull it into your OTBI report. And the value we're looking for now is unpaid. So once you've done that, you're going to click OK. And then it works. You can see that the invoice amount and the invoice paid amount don't equal 0. So it falls into a status of unpaid. Now that you've validated that your formula for formula-driven column works for both paid and unpaid invoices, meeting the criteria. So just as you can see, when the invoice amount doesn't equal the invoice amount paid, it's going to pop up as status as unpaid.
Thank you, Connor. So now that you all have seen how to create a basic analysis, we want to show you how to add a second subject area to continue to report on. So to start, we're going to explain and kind of go more into detail about what a subject area is. So by definition, a subject area are pre-built metadata content for BI reporting solutions with seamless integration in Oracle Fusion applications. So again, in English, this and throughout this presentation, you've seen that each subject area that Oracle provides contains a list of different folders. And within each folder, there are a list of different data elements or columns that you can pull in and report on. These data elements are directly tied to the Oracle Cloud application itself. So when something is changed in the application, that change is reflected within this reporting tool immediately. So there are two things to keep in mind when we're reporting with multiple subject areas. First is to make sure that you include a measure from each subject area that you're reporting from. And the second is if the second subject area does not share the same folder that you're reporting on, then the analysis will end in error. And now our second point, we're going to get into a little bit more as this section continues, but you're probably asking to yourself, well, what is a measure? What is a measure column? So what a measure column is that it's data that can change for each record and can be added up or aggregated in some way. So an example of that is the invoice amount or the invoice amount paid. Examples that are not measures would be columns such as invoice description or invoice number. So to continue, in this section, we're going to be adding data elements and columns from the procurement, procure to pay, real-time subject area. So first, we're going to go back to our existing analysis and click the Add Subject Area icon, and then click the desired subject area that we want to add, and then select OK. Which, just to point out again, it's going to be what's boxed in red right here, and then this is going to be our list of different subject areas that we can either add or remove. So next, so there's kind of a lot going on in this slide. So I want to point out that on the bottom right of your screen, right here, you're going to see a list of data elements that I'm going to be pulling from this procurement subject area. So the supplier folder, what you'll notice, and I have boxed off in red, is shared between both the payables and procurement subject areas. So we'll have no problem reporting using the site address. And the site address is just a data element within this folder or column within this folder. So what I also want to point out is that since the supplier folder is shared between the subject areas, it's actually going to tie these two subjects together. And if we didn't have this folder or some sort of a link like this, then we wouldn't be able to report using these two subject areas together. And then what I'll also point out is that the other three folders that I am pulling data elements or columns from are not shared. And even though we have our link, this would still cause us issues when we're reporting on them, but this is actually avoidable. So to avoid this and to do so, we're gonna have to go into our advanced settings and change a few things around, which we're gonna show you on this next slide. So you can see here that we jumped over to our advanced tab, which you can see is right here. And just to backpedal a little bit, our criteria tab is where we first created our analysis. Our results tab is where we were able to preview our results and add a calculated measure. And now our advanced tab is more like a settings tab. But you'll see that I scroll down to the advanced SQL clauses section, and next to this dimensionality icon right here, I had checked off this icon, and then clicked Apply SQL. Now, I want to stress that you have to click this Apply SQL button. I know I've forgotten to a bunch of times. And if you don't, your settings actually aren't going to be saved. And if they're not saved and you go to view the results or run your report, you're going to run into a lot of errors. So after settings are updated, we can view our results and see right away that there is data being pulled from both subject areas. And it's really at this point that we're successfully reporting across 2 or multiple subject areas. And with that, that'll end our multiple subject area section. And we're actually going to move on to creating a dashboard. And so let's get into what a dashboard is. To put it simply, a dashboard is a personalized view of information, meaning you can add or include almost anything that you're able to access or open with a web browser. Now, dashboards can actually get pretty complex to build, and depending on what kind of information you want to add to it. But what we're going to be showing you today is strictly the basics. Like if you're interested in seeing anything else, like a little more of the advanced information on how else you can leverage this dashboard tool, you want to visit docs.oracle.com. But moving on from that, when it comes to reporting, security is really important. So when it comes to a dashboard, the same security that revolves around OTBI and creating analyses applies here. So the bottom line is that if you don't have data access or job roles to create or look at specific subject areas or data, you're not going to have it here either. So we'll start by actually creating a dashboard prompt. And for those of you who actually have experience with creating a regular OTBI analysis, this may look very familiar and look the same to creating a regular analysis prompt. But I want to point out that this is very different. So typically, when you're creating prompts, it'll be for a single analysis that you're working with at the time. But whereas a dashboard prompt is different by how it is applied to multiple analyses at once. Now we will see in this, and we'll see in this section when we run our dashboard how this will be applied to multiple analyses at once. But we'll see that later on. So in order to do this, we actually have to select a subject area before we can start pulling data elements or columns in which we like to create prompts for. So just for some background, each data element or each column that we want to create a prompt for actually has a unique formula that defines and identifies that column itself. So that formula will tie to our analyses that we include in our dashboard later on. So any columns without an analysis that matches the formula that we're including in our prompt if it matches, it'll be controlled by this prompt, and if it does not match, it will not be controlled. That'll make a little bit more sense as we continue through this presentation. But what I wanted to show here is that we created 2 prompts, one for the formula-driven field that we had created earlier, and the other was for the supplier name. So below box in red, you're actually going to get a preview of what that'll look like. And strictly for aesthetics, I actually decided to click that new column button, which you'll see right here. And what that does is that it'll take your supplier prompt, and instead of having that stacked underneath your paid or unpaid prompt, it's actually going to push that right next to it. And I prefer this just for aesthetic reasons, but you don't have to do that. So after creating your dashboard prompt, you now have to go ahead and make sure that your existing analysis is dashboard ready. Now, what that means is that we have to go into our analysis or analyses that we're going to be including on our dashboard and update our filter operators to is prompted for the filters to drive prompts off of. And just to point out, the operator in this case would be the is equal to or is in. This has to be set to is prompted for the dashboard prompt to be linked to this analysis. After making sure your filters and your analyses are dashboard ready, it's time to actually create our dashboard. So you can see at the bottom left of your screen that we have a section called catalog. Sorry. Here we can search for our existing analyses and dashboard prompts, and then drag them into the drop section that we're actually indicating by the direction of our red arrows. So above our catalog section, there's actually a section called the dashboard objects. So here you can pull in some custom fields such as text fields, images, action links, and other more advanced dashboard tools that, again, we're not going to be getting into today, But if you are interested to learn more about these tools, you can just visit docs.oracle.com. So for a quick example, I had added a custom text field. You'll see at the top of your screen. And again, sorry, I'm taking a drink of water. Sorry about that. So again, to add this custom text field, it was simply a drag and drop from that dashboard objects field. And once it's added, you can hover your mouse across any of the sections that we had added. And by hovering your mouse, you actually reveal the edit icon. So you'll see I have boxed off in red on our text field that if we were to click this, we'll have our text properties pop up here. And by doing this, we'll actually be allowed to edit what will show up in this text properties when we actually run the dashboard itself. So I have decided to use this section as more of a title, but you don't have to. You can use this for anything that you want, and you can even preview it in the section below right here. And then you just click OK to save it. Now, before I move forward, I do want everyone to notice that on the top left of our screen, we're going to see this icon, page 1. We can actually rename this to something more identifiable, because if you're actually going to be using this dashboard, you want to be able to recognize what kind of information is on each page. And also, I am inferring that we can add multiple pages to this dashboard, which we're going to show you right now. Or we'll show you in a few slides. But when we edit our text field, you'll see you'll have these, oh, I apologize, I'm jumping forward. To change the name of the tab from page 1 to something else that's more identifiable, to understand what kind of information is going to be on your dashboard, you simply need to go into your dashboard properties, as you can see here, select the page that you want to change. Oh, sorry about that. Select the page that you want to change, and then click this edit button, and then you can simply add or what you want to change or rename your tab to. So now going to adding multiple pages to your dashboard, you can click that icon on the top right of your screen. This will add a new page. And when you click this button, you're going to have this, this add dashboard page prompt show up immediately. And you'll be able to, from here, name your new page as well as give it a description. And so you don't have to go back into the settings every single time to change the name of your dashboard page. And what I also want to point out is that on the top left of our screen, the tab that was originally page 1 has now been updated to what we had changed our page to earlier. And now lastly in this section, I do want to point out that, oh, sorry about that. So after we had changed after we created our second page, and after we had added all the customization that we want to, we added our title, we added our analyses, we actually save and run our report. So what I want to point out is that on the screenshot on our left is our first page, and the screenshot on our right is our second page. And on our first page, the screenshot on the left, I want to point out, and I hope you'll notice that we have our custom text box, which is our page header. And underneath that, you will see the dashboard prompt we had previously created. And below that, you'll see a bright green tile. This tile is actually a performance tile that we didn't specifically go into how to create, but Connor earlier had touched upon adding new views to your analysis through the new view dropdown on the results page of your analysis. But moving forward, if we were to update our dashboard prompt to see paid invoices or even change the supplier name, both the analysis and performance tile will update accordingly. Same goes for the information on page 2. And again, we didn't go through the creation of the analyses on page 2, but they were created in the exact same way as page 1, but instead of having a performance tile, we have a graph. And now, lastly, what we like to show in this section is that Oracle has already created seeded dashboards. Oracle has actually several of these dashboards that you should have access to view. This example I'm showing here is a purchasing dashboard that has multiple analyses on it. Seeded dashboards like this can be found underneath the dashboard dropdown at your OTBI homepage that we had shown in the beginning of this presentation. Now we're going to be talking about data models. So a data model is a set of instructions for a BI publisher to retrieve and structure data for a report. What I want to point out here is that BI publisher, like Connor stated earlier, requires some degree of technical background. In this section, we're not going to create a true BI publisher report, but we will leverage a data model to help us create and format a report using an existing OTBI analysis. So I really want to point that out. So we're not going to be creating a true BI published report because it does require a technical background, but we are going to be using the analysis that we had created earlier to help format our new report. So lastly, a data model can be created using any of the sources that are listed here, but again, we're going to be focusing with the OTBI analysis. So sorry about that. So to get started, we need to add our analysis. We need to add our analysis to the data model by using the additions icon on the top of your screen. When added, you'll see the name of your analysis with the columns to the left. You'll also notice that the column headers have been replaced with columns 0 through 8. This is an unavoidable change just due to the nature of adding your analysis to the data model. Now, in order to change these values, we want to head into our structure tab. You'll see, we'll head into our structure tab, and immediately you're going to see the corresponding columns 0 through 8 names under the XML tag name. But now, instead of changing these, I actually would suggest to leave these alone, as these column names will not actually show up on your finished report. But what I do want to change is the display name boxed in red. By changing these names, we can customize and format our report, and these are the names that you're going to be seeing when we actually run. So you'll see that on the right, boxed in red, this is what we're going to see at the final stages of our report and when we actually run it. So after that, we're going to hop over to our data tab, and just like the results tab in the OTBI analysis, we can preview the data that's being pulled, and you can validate whether the data is correct or not correct and make whatever kind of changes that you want to. But because we're using an existing analysis, there really isn't much validation that we have to do. So we can simply save a sample data and create report. And now the save a sample data, what that button is going to do is that when we're customizing and formatting our report in the slides to come, this is the data that's going to be shown. So you actually have some examples of what your report could look like while you're creating it. So after saving and clicking create report, you're going to have the wizard show up. So your data model should already be defaulted into selection right here. But if it's not, you can use the data model button above to search for your recently created data model and add it to your selection. Click next in the wizard to edit and add elements such as tables, graphs, charts, etc., which you'll see in this middle screenshot. And at the end of the wizard, you'll have the option to customize the layout of your report, which is what we're going to do here and was what I would always recommend. So after clicking finish, the report wizard will bring you to this editing tool. Using the data source section on your left, we can drag and drop the fields into the report page. At the top of your report, you're going to notice the report title. Below that, you'll notice that we created 3 sections, one for 3 specific purchase orders that we want to report on, filtering for the year 2014. And what you notice immediately is that this report does not look at all the same as to our OTBI analysis. And even though we're pulling the same data, we can alter and change the report to how we want it to be viewed. So in this case, I wanted to only view invoices that have a date of 2014 for these 3 specific purchase orders. So unlike OTBI, we have a lot more flexibility to format and create our reports. We can add images, page breaks, page numbers, and other tools that are very similar to Microsoft Word, believe it or not, such as we can add date fields that will update every time you run the report and either show you the latest date of the report being ran, the latest save date, or whatever kind of information you're looking to add. And this can all be added through this header up here or in your page layout tab. So the big differences between strictly using OTBI versus leveraging a data model is the formatting flexibility you have with a single report and the amount of content the report can handle producing. So for example, if we were to have an analysis that produced 100,000 rows of data, an OTBI analysis would take a really long time to search and pull everything we need. After waiting for the pulled information for the OTBI analysis, it's then going to be split up into several different pages that you actually have to click through manually and potentially wait for each page to load. Now, in contrast, by leveraging a data model, you can use the exact same report, but it can be formatted nicely into a Word document, and it will produce all 100,000 lines at once without any extra manipulation or waiting. It's going to show up, yes, on several different pages because, again, it's 100,000 rows of data, but you don't have to click through and wait for the information to actually load. It'll be all right there for you, and it can be easily printed. So the bottom line is data models can handle a lot heavier of load compared to OTBI analysis, and leveraging a data model will give you more flexibility when you want to format your reports. So the example that we have shown above is really, really basic, and we didn't want to show anything too much more complex simply because we knew we were going to be kind of short on time, but we also wanted to keep this presentation to a very introductory level. So moving on to our actually final slide of today, we're going to be really kind of digging into the limitations of OTBI. So the limitations of OTBI really comes down to three main points. First is the lack of flexibility in formatting. The second is the amount of content or size of the load it can handle. And our third point is a little more complex. It's on a little more of the complex side that we didn't really show today, but it really differentiates the two reporting methods and how OTBI lacks a true capability of reporting across multiple modules. So in our presentation today, we did show how an OTBI report can report across multiple subject areas, but there are limitations to what you can do. So for example, we actually had a client who wanted us to create a report that tied our AP invoices to their AR invoices for their invoice recharge process. So to do this, we would have to create a tie that would tie those two subject areas together. But unfortunately in OTBI, those ties did not exist. And the subject areas unfortunately can't be edited. You can't add or remove any kind of columns or data elements to those areas. You're kind of stuck with what Oracle provides for you. Whereas if we were trying to build this report if we were going to try to build this report in OTBI, it would fail just simply because the columns that we need aren't available and we physically can't tie these subject areas together. Whereas if we were to try to build this report in BI Publisher by using a source that is not an OTBI analysis, so it could either be SQL, it could be an Excel document, or some other source where you need a technical background, you can actually create these ties manually. You can add information to these so-called subject areas. So with OTBI, you unfortunately can't do that. So at the end of the day, the three main points is that OTBI, it lacks the flexibility of formatting. The amount of content or size it can load is much less to what a data model can hold. And you can do true reporting across multiple modules or subject areas when you're not using a source of OTBI. So that'll conclude our presentation for today. And now we're going to open the floor to questions. So I know, Kelly, you were writing down some questions for us.
Well, I've been following on the chat, and it doesn't seem, I've addressed all the questions that I've been able to, that have come through. So if anyone does have any questions right now, feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand. I can turn your microphone on, and we can take it from there. We can just give them a couple minutes, Mike.
Sure, no problem.
Doesn't look to be anything coming in at the moment. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat.
If there's not any questions, we do want to thank you for today. We appreciate all your time. We'll obviously wait a little bit longer to see if you guys have anything else. If you're still typing.
Yes, so if you do have any questions, feel free to email Mike or Connor. Did you guys put your emails out there?
We have not, but we can put them in the chat.
Yeah, we'll drop Mike and Connor's emails in the chat, or you can also reach out to myself. And if you have requested a copy of the recording of this webinar, I'll be sending those out as well.
Awesome. I can do that as well. So here's my email.
Okay, Mark, I will add you. And I'm scrolling. And Sean. Mark,
Yep.
Sean, Julia, and Adiri. All right. Well, we thank everybody for their participation. And Thank you, Mike and Connor, for sharing your information. It's been a wealth of information. And please look forward to our next webinar coming in March. On that topic will be Salesforce. So thank you very much. And we'll stop the webinar now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you. And